I quietly left after discovering my wife's affair after 3.5 years of marriage. A year later, my ghosted ex-wife tracked me down. After hearing of my wife's adultery, I moved to the hills. I'm not sure why I'm writing this, but perhaps it will be helpful to someone now that the incident is over and I've moved on. After 3.5 years of marriage, I learned of my wife's affair in February 2018. I worked a contract job that occasionally required a lot of travel but also permitted me to work from home when I returned. As a director of a technical sales company, my wife held a very lucrative position. Although things had become a little strained due to her working longer and longer hours and me traveling for work, we still had what I would call a fairly excellent marriage. Background: 5 years ago, at a cookout hosted by a mutual acquaintance, I met my wife, who is now my ex. We immediately clicked after we started talking. To be honest, I felt that being with a woman who was so attractive and articulate was a huge advantage. My rough around the edges demeanor somehow appealed to her. After a few weeks of dating, we found ourselves smitten with one another. When we would meet at each other's apartments, the clothes simply flew off. After 18 months of dating, we eventually got married and moved into a large apartment while saving for a down payment on a home. Things began to change after the first 3 years of marriage. Even though I still had feelings for her, I noticed that she would argue over little matters. When I mentioned all the late hours and the increasingly regular work outings, she would grow irate. Since she had been moving up the corporate ladder, she would claim that it was a necessary component of paying the dues. At least that was her justification. She informed me that since I was also away for weeks at a time, I had no right to challenge her. In reality, I had only been taking vacations for 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks or so I assured her that I could definitely manage cutting back on my travel time. There was never a conclusion to these highly circular arguments. Looking back, I realized that I was unaware that my wife was having an affair. Aside from our declining sexual life and her persistently late work hours, I would never have suspected anything. I simply assumed that she was exhausted from her job. But being rejected so often when I tried to start a sexual relationship had taken a toll on my ego. Although she had a work mobile phone and might have been using it, I didn't witness the covert texting that I had read about in other articles. She used our spare bedroom as a home office and spent a lot of time there. Around September 2017, Kathy began returning home from work and spending the evening at a work engagement instead. This increased from 1 night per week to over 3 nights each week. Although I'm not naturally envious, she would undoubtedly be observed by others, and I'm aware that she would need to repel some of the males at her workplace. Despite working with more male CEOs than female ones, she gave off the impression that she was primarily engaged in her job. The first time I suspected she was cheating was a month prior to D-Day. Before returning home, she had made a brief stop at the supermarket. I was asked to assist her with the grocery shopping. Something pink was glinting from just beneath the front passenger seat of her automobile as I was retrieving a few items from the rear seat. It was a bra that belonged to my wife. She preferred ones from a certain clothing store, so I knew it was hers. Looking back, I can see the bra was a warning sign. She always removes her bra first, from under her clothes, when she's feeling very lustful. I'm not sure why, but when I watched this, I felt sick to my stomach right away. I couldn't understand why her bra was beneath the seat. I didn't say anything more. My heart must have been pounding so hard that I nearly passed out, because when I brought the bags back to the kitchen, Kathy asked me how I was feeling and said that I appeared to have seen a ghost. I simply ignored her remark. It took everything I had to conceal my emotions, but I did my best not to appear upset or deceived. I made the decision to try to find out whether or not she was seeing someone that night and the following day. I began to consider all the hints I could have overlooked. Other than the bra, I had no evidence. She works in an office building downtown, and we live in a reasonably big city. I made the decision to temporarily put the affair idea out of my mind and consider giving her more of my attention. I prepared a delicious meal and arranged the dining table with elegant plates, silverware, and candles one Friday after work. I purchased an arrangement of flowers and a lovely bottle of wine. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had made when she arrived as usual, breezing in after work. She apologized and said she was sorry, but she had to go to a neighborhood hangout to meet up with her coworkers. She mentioned that she needed to take a shower first but that she could have a small snack with me before she left. I guess I went utterly silent because my insides flipped on me. I won't explain the type of anger I was experiencing at the time, but I had had enough. I took my work cell phone and threw it in her back seat while she was taking a shower. I had been considering this as a means of using my own phone to find her. I walked into the kitchen after that and threw the food and flowers in the garbage. After taking a shower, she got ready and looked stunning as always. "All right, let's eat," she said. "Never mind, go out with your friends," I urged her. She asked me if I was angry after giving me a weird look. "I'm sad that you never want to do anything with me," I said. She got upset and sarcastically remarked on my short fuse while telling me to stop acting like a kid. I muttered, "Foolish me," as I stood there allowing everything to settle in. For once, I felt we should spend the evening together. She simply gave me a sly smile and stormed off. I pulled out my second phone and began following my work phone when she departed. About 20 minutes away, at the bar she often visits with her coworkers, I caught her stopping. I made the decision to go find her automobile. Indeed, it was in the parking lot of the bar. I waited to see if I could see her in my car across the street. I felt completely different, like a stalker, but I told myself that I had to calm my fear of her whereabouts. I observed her leaving the bar with a man about an hour after I got there. He had the appearance of an executive from her company. He took hold of her, drew her near, and planted a kiss on her lips. My body was totally numb, and my stomach started to clench up. They went to a different vehicle and climbed in together. When their automobile pulled out, I tried to keep up with them. You guessed it, they drove to a hotel 10 minutes away. As I stopped on the street beside the hotel, I saw them exit, holding hands, and enter. I'd seen enough. I felt foolish. I began pounding the steering wheel with my fist. That was it? Something went totally blank inside of me. I'm not sure if I had an out-of-body experience or blacked out, but as I got better, I felt like I wanted a drink. At this point, my life started on a path I never would have imagined. I simply began to drive out of town, replaying all that I had just seen. I was crying out of anger, as much as I hate to admit it. I located a pleasant little tavern on the outskirts of town, some 30 miles away, and stopped in. I ordered a drink while seated at the bar. The bartender, a lady, said that I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails, so I guess I looked like death warmed over. I answered, half smiling. "You could say that." A man sat down beside me and struck up a discussion. Even though I didn't feel like talking, there was something about this guy that put me at ease. We struck up a conversation, and eventually my wife's infidelity came up. I told her that all I wanted to do was get away from her and forget about her. "You're not alone, buddy," he replied, giving me a back pat after giving me a quick glance. I experienced that a few years ago. I think there's a reason why these things occur. Your life can now take a positive or negative turn, I assure you. At this point, everything is totally up to you. His remarks, for some reason, jolted me out of my gloom. Even though I was aware of my pain, I've always been able to see things rationally, and he was absolutely correct. We identified ourselves. Ray was his name. I really liked his salt-of-the-earth vibe, even though he was more of a country guy. "When are you going to move out?" he inquired. I suppose I never thought to look that far ahead. I had a fight-or-flight response going on, and I knew I didn't want to be around this woman any longer. "I have an idea and I feel very sympathetic to your situation," Ray added. "When the time comes, I have a mobile trailer on my land in case you feel the need to go. It might require some work and isn't very good. Why don't you visit and see if you could imagine yourself briefly residing in anything like that? I'll give you a terrific bargain on it, at least. You could even park it on a lovely piece of property I own. I would appreciate it if you could watch it for me. It could be beneficial to escape your predicament, just a thought." I took a moment to comprehend his concept. "Hell, honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in his trailer or anything just to get my head on straight," added the bartender, who had been listening in on the chat. Perhaps this was just what I needed, but I felt as though I had wandered into the twilight zone. "Yes, I'll think about it and maybe check it out," I said to Ray. After a while, we split up and agreed to get together at his house in a few days. I began to feel as though I had some perspective and an opportunity to escape what I thought was a terrible heartache combined with a nightmare. I knew one thing for sure: I would never, ever want to spend time with my wife again. I find cheating to be so disgusting, and it has always been the one thing I thought I would never put up with. I sat on the couch when I arrived home that evening after Kathy. Kathy asked me where I had been when she came out. "Where have you been?" I questioned, turning to face her. "You know I went to grab drinks," she said. I directly inquired, "Are you having an affair?" She appeared surprised, but she soon collected herself and responded, "No, why would you ask me that?" I informed her that I had heard she might be seeing someone at work. "Who told you that?" she said. "Someone I know," I said, but I kept the name a secret. After saying, "You're being ridiculous," she accused me of being intoxicated and insane and inquired about my whereabouts. "We're going to a bar to enjoy some drinks with our friends," I remarked. Despite her obvious desire to ask more questions, she returned to our bedroom and went to bed. Now that I had proof that she had been deceiving me for months, I made the decision to sleep on the sofa. I couldn't sleep at all because I kept seeing her in bed with this guy. I felt sorry for myself, disgusted, and hurt. But then I thought about Ray's trailer. The thought of it cheered me up, and it was almost like a revelation. Something must be wrong with me since the fight or flight response automatically activated amid the pain I was experiencing, and I preferred the flight response. We didn't talk much the following morning and carried on with the weekend as if nothing had occurred. I scheduled a meeting with Ray a few days later. I noticed that Ray had a lovely ranch when I got there, and the trailer was actually quite nice, about 26 feet long and fully furnished. It brought back memories of a fun spring break trip I took with pals while I was in college. Ray accepted the money I offered him for the trailer. To be honest, I almost took it from him. I drove over to see his ranch property after he gave me directions. There were hiking and biking paths close by, and the area was lovely, with lots of trees and scrub vegetation. Ray had a little cabin on a hilltop overlooking the property, with electricity and water accessible for the trailer, and it was close to the foothills of some mountains. Ray promised to set up the trailer for me and pull it to the location. I tried to get Kathy to come clean over the course of the following few weeks, but all I got was gaslighting. I even bluntly warned her that there would be no turning back if I discovered she was cheating. As a result, she became even more engrossed in her affair fog, and began to lash out at me with denials. I nearly laughed at how awful the denial was. I scolded myself for not capturing pictures of the two of them, and I had no tangible evidence that she had cheated. I decided that I wanted to leave this marriage after going through this emotional anguish. Instead of communicating my feelings to Kathy, I simply began planning. While she was at work, I started quietly removing my possessions from the apartment and transferring them to the trailer. At least I felt like I was doing something about it. I saw a difference in Kathy during this period. Although she had been behaving more politely toward me, I believed it was too little, too late. I felt I needed a break too, so she kept going on company outings, after work. One night, I got ready too, just as she was leaving. After glancing at me, she inquired about my destination. All I said was, meeting up with some friends. You wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk, and you don't know them? I interrupted her as she began to ask more questions. She used to say precisely this to me whenever I asked if I might accompany her on office excursions. All right, have a good time, she added, with a somewhat offended expression. I definitely will, I replied. I began making new acquaintances while working on the trailer and hanging out with Ray at the bar. I felt better after spending time with Ray's wonderful family and friends. I also made the decision to cut back on my drinking because I didn't want to form any unhealthy habits. I knew better than to drown myself in sympathy, even though it would have been so simple. At this point, Kathy informed me that the next week she would be traveling for work. She stated the executive team and a few department heads were going when I inquired who was going. I hope you have a great time with your boyfriend, I added, glancing at her. I immediately regretted saying that because it sparked a furious argument. Although, as Ray had informed me, it didn't really matter, I now regret not knowing more about her affair partner, AP. It doesn't matter who the other guy is, Ray replied. The fact that she chose to leave you is all that matters. She destroyed the marriage, whether she admits it or not, brother, facts are facts. Ray ought to write a book for the betrayed. Damn it. I had the ideal opportunity to move out entirely during Kathy's work vacation. When she was gone, I collected everything valuable that was mine, including clothes, laptops, and equipment. I didn't take any shared goods or furniture. I left a note before I left. It was a lengthy explanation at first, but I chose to make it brief. I wrote, I hope it was worth it on a piece of paper. On top of the note on the kitchen table, I set my wedding ring. I felt like a great weight had been lifted as I left. I was liberated. The hurt would take time to heal, and there would be baggage to cope with, but I had started. I needed time to myself and to swiftly and quietly get rid of her. The fact that I hadn't challenged her or coerced a confession didn't make me proud. I hadn't screamed or shouted. She didn't deserve it, in my opinion. She disregarded everything we owned, including our plans for the future, our aspirations for a home and a family, and now it was all gone. There was no turning back. I owed her absolutely nothing. She could handle the consequences. I hadn't planned anything or called a lawyer. I just wanted a new beginning and some clarity. The air from the mountains was just what I needed when I got inside my trailer. I resumed running the next week, and it was wonderful to be alive. Kathy texted things like, "We just landed," "We're having a team dinner," and so on while she was away. "Where are you?" was the question in a few mails. "Why haven't you gotten back to me?" I didn't answer. My phone exploded with calls and texts when she got home. She kept trying to get in touch with me, but I ignored her. Her mother also tried to phone me after the first day, but I didn't pick up. She didn't try to engage my father because we aren't close and he is the only member of my family that I still have. Her messages grew more urgent after she was ignored for a week. "What is this?" was one of the texts she sent. "We must speak. I'm not sure what you believe you know, but nothing is happening. There isn't an affair going on." She finally texted me after a week of not answering, saying, "I'm sorry things got out of hand. It didn't matter that I was involved with someone at work. You were absent a lot while I was preoccupied with my work. I simply made an error. I intended to terminate it." An error? I had been waiting for this confession all along, yet somehow it only made me detest her more. Why was she unable to be truthful? I didn't have any dreams about a future with this woman. Errors don't persist for 6, 8, or a year. Her pleas for me to return and work on the marriage eventually grew pitiful. I refused to respond to her even after she stopped bothering me for a few weeks. I didn't want her to learn where I lived or to snoop around in my life. I didn't want my haven to be destroyed by this woman. She then began sending nasty texts like, "You're a coward one day. You refuse to speak to me. You have no regard for us. Come home, please, so we can discuss. You're where? I am able to visit you. Paul, please let's chat and make things right. Damn it." Although I don't recall all of the texts, they all appeared to be excuses with minimal genuine regret. In one ear, I let them go, and in the other out. After a while, I switched my mobile number. Update: June 2018. I received an email from Kathy informing me that she had hired a lawyer and was going to file for divorce. I just said, "Okay, that sounds good." This led to a barrage of emails requesting that I visit her and other things. She wrote that she would stop bothering me if I consented to an uncontested divorce after realizing this wouldn't work. After I consented, I was genuinely free a few months later. After I moved out of our apartment, I never had to see her again. She seemed to care more about that than I did, even though neither of us had any closure. I would occasionally think of her for a few months, and yes, the grief would suddenly come to me, like when I heard a song we used to enjoy. After a while though, I simply stopped thinking about her. Update 2. Now that I'm officially divorced, things are going great. In actuality, I got to know a wonderful girl. Just down the hill from my house, I was running on the trail. We clicked when I helped her replace a flat tire. Despite being a few years younger than me, she is fantastic and quite adorable. She refers to me as her mountain man, and adores my way of life. Although I'm not in a rush to commit, I also don't intend to give up on women entirely. I have no intention of moving out of the trailer anytime soon. I enjoy being outside and have simplified my life. It made everything easier for me, including the grief and my ex-wife. I am aware that everyone responds to these situations in a unique way. I was fortunate to be in my 3rd year of marriage and not yet a parent. I believe I acted in my own best interests. You don't have to spend your entire life with someone who cheats. If you experience something similar, try not to think about it too much. Continue living your life. As you improve yourself, it will get better. I hope everyone has the finest possible life. I've revised this roughly 5 times to make it readable, and I just wanted to give you an update on my ex-wife's condition. I was worried that my ex-wife was attempting to find me, as I indicated in my earlier post. I left our previous residence, which was around 2 hours away. I ran into her last weekend at a coffee shop I often visit in the town close to my home. It didn't seem like a coincidence to me. Fortunately, I managed to get away before she noticed me. Third update: I went into town this past weekend to get groceries and made a stop at my normal coffee establishment. I was utilizing their free internet to work on some paperwork for work. I finished and walked out of the coffee shop. I was on my way to my pickup when I heard someone shout, "Paul!" When I turned to look across the street, I saw Kathy. I was being waved at by my ex-wife. Finally, Armageddon had arrived. She hurried across the street toward me, and I stood there in disbelief. As though anticipating an embrace, she walked over and extended her hand. I stopped her in her tracks by instinctively holding out my arms with my palms up. She appeared to be in severe pain. Then she added, "I've been searching for you, Paul. I've wanted to see you since I heard you moved here. Can we have a conversation?" Guys, I felt like an animal confined in a cage. Yes, I did. "All right, let's find a table or something and we can talk for a minute," I finally gave in. When she asked if we could come to my house, I firmly refused. At the end of the street, she trailed me down to a bench outside a small store. She began by remarking on how much I had changed and how much she liked my new appearance, beard, and level of fitness. She raved about how much my body had changed. Wearing a tank top, small white shorts, and her hair in a ponytail, just like I used to enjoy, she was really putting on the charm. I had my radar set high. She was clearly attempting to activate the sex appeal. I needed to control myself so I could see where this was headed. She began by saying she was sorry about the affair. She claimed that after I left, karma had severely impacted her. When her employer learned of the affair, the situation became so tense that she eventually resigned. Her affair partner AP, who at the time was engaged, received criticism and was transferred to a different department within the organization. She replied by telling his fiancée the truth after he blamed her for everything, which caused them to split up. This is when she bowed her head and began to weep. I didn't say anything, I just sat there and looked around. She stood up straight and looked at me for a while. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She assured me that she had no intention of having an affair. She stated that the company's politics and positioning drew her in, and that her AP used his charm and influence to corrupt her. She acknowledged that she felt she was taking advantage of him as much as he was taking advantage of her. After I accused her of cheating, she stated that she intended to come clean. She drank after work to ease the guilt she felt at the moment because she loathed herself. She claimed that she felt so stupid, so alone, and as like her heart had burst with loss immediately after I departed. She ended her relationship with her AP right away. She believed she had to find me to see if there was any chance of reconciliation because I refused to speak with her or get in touch with her. She desired a fresh start. She hoped we could start afresh even though she knew we were divorced. I simply gazed at her. I then gave it to her. "You have no right to come out here and undo all the harm you have done. Do you think I'll overlook everything you did to destroy our union? As I previously stated, we were done if you cheated. Forgiveness does not exist. This relationship will not be restarted. You murdered it. As soon as you left me, you ruined everything we had. How foolish do you believe me to be? One evening, I watched you enter a hotel with him. Were you aware of that?" I became aware that people were beginning to notice that my voice had been getting louder. She grabbed my arm and started crying. After letting her sob on my shoulder for a while, I pushed her away. "I deserve all this," she replied, glancing up at me. "I am certain that I do. If nothing else, would you allow me to take you out to dinner? I'd rather not go. I would like to speak further. I want to make sure that we are transparent about everything. You need to spend more time with me than you have in the past. Paul, please. I love you so much, even though I know you might not want to hear it. Before you left me, I had no idea how much I loved you. You broke me as much as I broke you. I'm unable to forgive myself, and I don't want to do so till the day I pass away." She began to sob uncontrollably and hyperventilate. I lifted her up and gave her a hug. It seemed like my only option for soothing her. I knew then that I had shattered her heart as severely as she had shattered mine. Walking, we found a peaceful spot to carry on our conversation. I said, "How did you find me?" when she had calmed down. "Have you engaged a private investigator?" After giving it some thought, she responded no with a small giggle. She clarified that she asked how things were going when she ran into Stacy a few weeks prior. Stacy didn't mention that she had noticed me. Kathy forced her to reveal all the information. I had warned Stacy not to tell her, so she was reluctant, but Kathy persisted. Stacy finally gave in, but all she knew was that I lived somewhere close by and was in town. On her days off, she began to come here to check on me. I kind of laughed when she said that, thinking, damn, Stacy can't keep her trap shut. She blushed. We ultimately decided to have dinner at a charming little spot with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything since I wasn't going to give her a reason to be kind to me or say she wasn't so inebriated that she couldn't drive back. In fact, we had a good conversation. I then escorted her to her vehicle. She insisted that she hadn't dated anyone else since I left and vowed fervently that I was the only person she wanted, so she pushed me hard to stay longer. "No, it's still way too early for me to go down that road," I informed her. She pleaded with me to come back, but I didn't say yes. After giving her my new email address, I didn't say anything more. My response to her request for my phone number was, "You'll just blow it up with texts and calls." She wept over it, but in the end, she agreed with my choice. She promised to send me an email with information on returning to town the following weekend before she left. I asked her directly, "Would you have forgiven me if I had been the one cheating?" before she got into her car. "Yes, in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with lots of talking, maybe even a binding agreement," she responded after pausing to reflect. "All right, maybe I could do that. In 5 or 10 years, I answered. "I would wait if that's what it would take," she replied. She then took both of my hands in hers, looked me in the eye and said, "God damn it, Paul, I will always love you and will do anything to prove it." This statement truly caught me off guard. Her remarks continued to upset me even after she left. She had spoken those words so firmly. However, I was still unable to envision us reuniting. Even though I felt better about the incident, I was unable to perceive her as a friend at this time. Perhaps a friend, but even that was a mystery. I returned home, enjoyed a long run, had some beer, and thought about how far I had come. Could someone please assure me that she wouldn't destroy the tranquility I had created for myself? I had no idea. I had the luxury of time to sort through it and get perspective, but it was all still too vivid in my mind. Last update. Most likely, this will be my final update. When I first uploaded my story to Reddit, the moderators kept taking it down. In summary, I ghosted my ex-wife for more than a year before she discovered me. She wanted to make amends and start over with us. You will be deeply disappointed if you thought I would be the typical beta blue pill fool, and forgive her. She expressed her love and regret for the affair in a lengthy email she sent me last week. She offered to come out and stay with me for the weekend once more. My answer? I silenced her. I informed her that I had no plans to make amends with her. I'm totally happy living alone, taking advantage of my secluded position, and keeping things simple. At 32, I'm not in a rush to make changes. I have my own self-determination plan and have enjoyed the company of a few women and friends. I made it clear in my email response that I had no intention of reconciling and declined to provide her with my phone number. I no longer know or trust you because you made your bed. I hope the best for you, and perhaps we might become friends in the future, but not right now. She was annoyed by my evasiveness and responded in a telling way. She acknowledged that she had taken a job offer from a different state. Her true goal had been for me to accompany her, believing that my remote work would make the move simple. She wished we could start over somewhere new. She wanted to visit me in person to attempt to persuade me because she was running out of time before moving. Luckily for me, her time was up because I had a week of business travel scheduled. I'm grateful. I will no longer have her in my life. She will soon recognize that her time with me is over, but I anticipate receiving a few more emails. She'll need to find someone else, and she might even cheat on them. To anyone reading this, make the most of your life. Let go of the past and give yourself the strength to go on. To all of you, good luck.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My mother is pressuring me to pick between my boyfriend and her because his family treats me badly. I am 3 months pregnant.
Hi, I'm Lily, a 19-year-old college student, and I've been in a relationship with my boyfriend Jake, also 19, for over a year now. Our story began in high school, where we met and quickly became inseparable. But life had different plans for us. Jake's passion for mechanics led him to pursue his dream of opening his own business specializing in luxury cars, which meant he had to move about 4-5 hours away from our hometown. Despite the distance, our love remained strong, and I fully supported Jake's decision to chase his dreams. We made it work, spending weekends together and cherishing every moment we had. However, things weren't as smooth sailing as I had hoped. The real challenge came from Jake's father, who didn't seem to take a liking to me. Behind my back he would make hurtful comments and remarks that cut deep. It was as if he didn't see me as worthy of his son or his family's legacy. I confided in my mother about these incidents, hoping for support and understanding. My relationship with my mother has always been close, but it has its complexities. She's fiercely protective of me, which sometimes translates into being overly critical of my choices. However, when it comes to Jake and his family's treatment of me, she's been nothing but supportive. She sees the disrespect for what it is and doesn't hesitate to stand by my side. Additionally, my mother's fears and concerns take precedence over my own interests, even though she only wants the best for me. Conversely, Jake is my confidant, my co-conspirator, and the only person who truly gets me. However, the personalities of his family provide a level of complication to our relationship that we both find difficult to manage. As I stand at this crossroads, torn between the love I have for Jake and the pressure from my mother to reevaluate our relationship, I can't help but wonder what the future holds for us. But one thing is certain: I refuse to let anyone, not even Jake's father or my own mother, dictate the path of my heart. I thought back to the day when I sat across from my boyfriend's family at the dinner table, trying not to sulk while they traded barely concealed jabs, and I was unable to get rid of the uneasy feeling that had taken hold of me. Even though I had felt uncomfortable with them before, tonight it seemed very obvious. Under the table, my boyfriend Jake reached for my hand and gave me a non-verbal reassurance that everything would be all right. However, the tension that pervaded the air like a dense mist could not be dispelled by his consoling touch. Whatever shell of civility I tried to maintain was pierced by his family's judgmental glances and passive-aggressive remarks, which felt like daggers. I had never been able to pinpoint exactly what it was that Jake's mother didn't like about me, but it was evident that I didn't meet her expectations. Perhaps it was my background, my upbringing, or simply the fact that I wasn't the type of woman she had envisioned for her son. I responded to Jake's attempt at conversation in a hurried and forced manner. I was plagued by a persistent sense that my every move and word was being closely examined and evaluated. Eventually, dinner came to an end, and we made our excuses to leave. As we stepped out into the cool night air, I let out a sigh of relief, feeling as though a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But even as we walked hand in hand towards the car, I couldn't shake the nagging sense of unease that lingered within me. The drive home was quiet, the tension between us palpable. I knew that Jake could sense my unease, could feel the weight of his family's disapproval pressing down on us both. But for now, neither of us dared to speak of it, afraid of what the conversation might entail, which could further darken the mood. As we pulled into the driveway of my home, I could feel a sense of dread wash over me. It was because I would have to face my own mother's scrutiny soon enough, and I dreaded the thought of another confrontation. Therefore, all I wanted was to escape into the safety of my own room, away from the prying eyes and judgmental whispers. On the following day, the tension in the air was palpable as I sat across from my mother, her disapproving gaze fixed on me like a spotlight. We were in the familiar surroundings of our living room, but the atmosphere felt heavier than usual, weighed down by the unspoken tension between us. The room was heavy with tension as my mother's voice began, carrying an urgency that sent a shiver down my spine. I knew what was coming, and I braced myself for the impending storm. She wasted no time in getting straight to the point. "I've been thinking a lot about you and Jake," she said, her words laced with a hint of disdain. "And I can feel that this relationship isn't good for you." I felt a knot form in the pit of my stomach as her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had anticipated her disapproval, but hearing it out loud still stung. I struggled to find the right words to defend my relationship, to make her understand the depth of my feelings for Jake. "But why, Mom?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice betraying the hurt and confusion swirling inside me. "Jake is a good person, and he makes me happy. Isn't that all that matters?" My mother's expression softened slightly, but her resolve remained unyielding. "It's not just about Jake, Lily. It's about his family too," she replied, her tone firm. "I've heard the way his father talks about you, the way they treat you. You deserve better than that, sweetheart." Her words touched an emotional level, dredging up memories of past encounters with Jake's father and the hurtful remarks he had made. I couldn't deny the truth in my mother's words, but I also couldn't ignore the love I felt for Jake, despite his family's shortcomings. "I know it's not ideal, Mom," I admitted, my voice trembling with emotion. "But I love Jake, and I believe we can overcome these obstacles together." My mother's expression softened, her eyes filled with a mixture of sympathy and concern. "I know you do, Lily," she said gently, reaching out to take my hand in hers. "But sometimes love isn't enough. You have to think about your future, about what's best for you in the long run." Her words made me feel torn inside. Part of me wanted to please my mother, listen to her advice, and shield myself from more pain. But another part couldn't imagine leaving Jake, the one who's always been by my side, no matter what. Sitting there, torn between my family and Jake, I wondered if I could make both sides happy without giving up my own happiness. But right now, I didn't have the answers, and I felt overwhelmed by the choices ahead, and unsure about the future. Particularly, the discovery of my pregnancy came as both a shock and a blessing. I had suspected for a while, but it wasn't until I missed my period for the third time that I finally mustered the courage to take a test. As the 2 red lines appeared, confirming my suspicions, a wave of emotions washed over me. I became really scared and unsure when I found out I was pregnant, especially because I don't get along well with Jake's family. I wondered how they would take the news. Would they continue to think I'm not good enough for their son and dislike me even more because a baby is coming? These worries filled my head, making it hard for me to be happy about having a baby. Instead of being excited about starting a family with Jake, I felt a deep fear. The pregnancy made it even harder to decide what to do about my relationship and the issues with our families. I wanted to keep my baby safe from any bad vibes from Jake's family, but I also loved Jake and felt our connection grow stronger with this news. The decision I faced was no longer just about me and Jake. It was about the future of our child and what kind of environment we wanted to bring them into. But for now, I had no answers. only a growing sense of apprehension about what lay ahead. When I needed someone to talk to, I naturally went to my best friend Sarah. We've been through a lot together, and I really trust her advice. I told her everything about my tough situation, including the problems with Jake's family and finding out I was pregnant. Sarah listened intently, her brow furrowed in concern as I recounted the turmoil that had consumed me in recent months. She offered words of comfort and support, reassuring me that no matter what decision I made, she would stand by me every step of the way. But the more we talked about my problem, the harder it seemed to find a simple solution. Sarah's suggestions didn't quite match what I wanted, which made me even more confused and stressed. She told me to think about my own happiness and my baby's future, but I felt bad about possibly letting down my family and Jake. After talking to Sarah, I felt even more unsure about what to do, but I was still a bit hopeful that I'd be able to figure out the best choice for me and my baby in the end. After seeking advice from Sarah and mulling over our conversation for days, I found myself at a crossroads. Each path seemed fraught with uncertainty, yet I knew I couldn't remain stuck by indecision any longer. I had to make a choice. I came to the realization that I had to stop letting fear control my actions as I thought about my circumstances. Yes, the disapproval of Jake's family hovered over us like a black cloud, but I wasn't going to let it overpower our love or determine our family's course. The news of my pregnancy made me even more determined to support Jake and our unborn kid through any challenges that may arise. With newfound determination, I knew I had to confront my mom and assert my autonomy and choices. I couldn't continue to let her control the course of my life, especially when it came to matters of the heart. Despite her doubts and disapproval, I plucked up the strength to sit her down and share my views and feelings with her. I told my mom that, even though she wants the best for me, I have to make my own choices for my future. I explained that Jake and I will have our challenges, but I have faith in our love and our strength to get through anything together. My mother listened in silence, her expression unreadable as I poured my heart out to her. When I finished speaking, there was a moment of tense silence, as if the weight of my words hung in the air between us. But then, to my surprise, she reached out and took my hand in hers, her eyes softening with understanding. Mom told me she might not always like my choices, but she believes I know what's right for my future. She said this kindly, showing she accepted and supported me, which made me tear up. She gave me her blessing to go after what I want and make my own way, wherever that takes me. With those words, a weight lifted off my shoulders and I felt a sense of freedom and empowerment wash over me. I had finally asserted my autonomy and claimed ownership of my choices, and it felt like the first step towards building the future I had always dreamed of. In the days and weeks that followed, Jake and I faced our fair share of challenges and obstacles. But with each hurdle we cleared, our bond grew stronger, our love more resilient. Together, we took steps toward building a future filled with hope and promise, knowing that no matter what lay ahead, we had each other and our unborn child to guide us through. And as we looked towards the horizon, hand in hand, I knew that with love and determination, we could overcome anything that stood in our way. Update 1. As I sit here reflecting on the tumultuous journey that has brought me to this moment, I can't help but marvel at how far I've come. From the uncertainty and fear that once plagued me to the newfound sense of empowerment and resilience that now courses through my veins, it's clear that I've grown and learned more than I ever thought possible. Through the trials and tribulations of navigating my relationship with Jake and the challenges presented by his family, I've discovered strength within myself that I never knew existed. I've learned to trust my instincts, to stand firm in my convictions, and to embrace the uncertainty of life with courage and grace. But perhaps the most profound lesson I've learned is the importance of love. Not just romantic love, but the love and support of family and friends who stand by you through thick and thin. In Sarah, I found a confidant and a pillar of strength who helped me navigate the complexities of my situation with wisdom and compassion. And in my mother, I found acceptance and understanding, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, love has the power to bridge the divide and bring us closer together. Looking ahead, I see a future filled with hope and promise, despite the challenges that may lie in wait. With Jake by my side, I know that together, we can weather any storm, overcome any obstacle, and emerge stronger and more resilient than ever before. Our love has been tested and tried, but through it all, it has only grown deeper and more steadfast, a beacon of light guiding us through the darkness. Update 2. As we prepare to welcome our child into the world, I'm really thankful for all the good things in our life. I'm excited for a future full of happiness and all the small, wonderful moments that show us how beautiful life is. When I think about looking into our baby's eyes, I'm sure we can handle any problems together, with love leading us. So as I close this chapter of my life and embark on the journey that lies ahead, I do so with a heart full of hope and a spirit filled with optimism. For I know that no matter what twists and turns may come our way,
I stopped being physically intimate with my husband because our connection faded. His constant grumpiness and unkindness toward me and the kids have made our home cold, and despite my wishes, it seems we're heading toward divorce. I stopped being physically intimate with my husband 7 months ago. Why? The comments on your thread basically said why. I didn't feel connected to him anymore. When I reflect on the early days of our marriage, there was a lightness between us, an easiness that seemed to permeate days and fill our home with laughter. We used to communicate with a look, understand each other's silence, and cherish the moments caught between the demands of daily life. He was my confidant, the person who made me feel seen and cherished. I remember the way he used to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, or how his hand would find mine across the crowded spaces of our lives. Those gestures, seemingly insignificant, held the weight of promises and the warmth of enduring love. Then, gradually, the atmosphere shifted. The buoyancy that had defined our relationship began to dissipate, replaced by a heaviness that neither of us could clearly identify at first. After we had kids, those signs of affection went 100% to his children. However, it wasn't just about the kids, though their arrival certainly reshaped our world in profound ways. It was something deeper, a fundamental change in how he saw me, or perhaps, in how he chose to express his feelings. I became an afterthought. Worse actually, I became an annoyance. At first, the change was slight. His smiles perfunctory and his once frequent caresses had become rare. Every time I walked into the room, the light in his eyes seemed to go out, as though I were a burden rather than a blessing. It was a silent anguish that intensified with every apathetic look and harsh comment, hurting in ways I was unable to put into words. Our conversations, once filled with shared dreams and playful banter, became logistical exchanges primarily focused on the kids or household duties. I tried to bridge the widening gap, reaching out with tentative words of affection, or attempting to initiate the kind of spontaneous intimacy that had once come so naturally to us. Each effort seemed to meet with a wall of indifference or, worse, irritation. The more I pressed, the more he withdrew, until the distance between us felt insurmountable. I could never do anything right. I was by his words, always forgetting, and lazy, for small things, such as forgetting to put leftovers in the fridge. The man who used to light up my world now cast long shadows over our home. His frustration seemed to simmer just below the surface, erupting over trivialities. He criticized more than he complimented, and what was once playful teasing now felt like pointed jabs. I recall one really depressing night. The kids had been particularly rowdy, and I had spent hours trying to settle them into bed. I entered the kitchen, exhausted, and saw him glaring icily at the shambles that had been left on the counter. He angrily asked, "Can't you just clean up after yourself?" It felt colder here than it had outside that night. His words stung, not because of their severity, but because of what they represented. A deepening void filled with resentment and misunderstanding. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a stranger where my husband used to be. The air in our house grew thick with unspoken resentments, and as much as I tried to penetrate the silence, my efforts seemed to only drive us further apart. His moods became a barometer for our daily life, unpredictable and often stormy. His words hurt, but more than his words did when he was grouchy, which was most of the time these days. There was an underlying coldness about him that permeated every part of our house. So obviously over time, I don't really feel safe with him, or even enjoy hanging out with him. The irony is that I love him so much that I want to be physically intimate with him because he's great in bed and selfless. But I just don't desire him. He's not kind to me or the kids when he's grumpy, which is most of the time. I tried to explain, to tell him how much I missed him, how much I missed us. "We could have a perfect life," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just be happy, enjoy us. That's all I want. Kind words, no criticism, small touches. We'd be having so much sex." But nah, that's too hard. What he's decided to do is withdraw. Give up. Marriage light, he calls it. No talking. No interaction. If he doesn't get sex, he's going to just do the bare minimum, for the family. Because sex comes first, then he'll be nice. Smart guy, but he's literally doing the opposite and saying that's the solution to his lack of sex problem. With a look of discouragement or even contempt, he shook his head. He turned his back on me and whispered, "It's not that simple." And it was then that I understood that the everyday affirmations of love and respect that had been steadily eroding were the answer, something he either failed to perceive or was unable to understand. Even though I don't want a divorce, it's clear that we are moving toward one. It was clear that we were spiraling toward an end neither of us had envisioned on our wedding day, driven there by lost connections and unmet needs. The irony was that, although we both desired intimacy, we were unable to bridge the widening gap. Update. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, our youngest, Mia, accidentally knocked over a glass of water. The sound of shattering glass echoed like a gunshot in the tense air. I held my breath, bracing for his reaction. True to the new norm, he stormed into the kitchen, his face contorted with frustration. "Can't you kids do anything right?" he snapped at her. Mia, only 7, her eyes wide and brimming with tears, recoiled as if the words were physical blows. I rushed to her side, but the damage was done. She was shaking, a small scared shadow of the bubbly child she once was. That night, after I had tucked Mia into bed and soothed her fears, I confronted him. "You can't keep doing this to the kids," I said, my voice firm despite the trembling I felt inside. "They're afraid of you. You're supposed to be their protector, their hero, and you're turning into the monster under their bed." He paused, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of realization in his eyes. But it passed quickly, and he shrugged off my concerns. "They need to learn discipline," he said, his voice devoid of the warmth I once loved. "I'm not going to tiptoe around them." The chasm between us widened with his every dismissive remark. I found myself wondering how the man I had fallen so deeply in love with could now look at me, at his own children, with such indifference and irritation. Our home had become a battlefield, our interactions mined with potential triggers for his temper. The situation escalated one afternoon when I found him berating our son, Lucas, for not finishing his homework. His tone was harsh, his words sharp, and I saw in Lucas the same fear that had gripped Mia. I stepped in, unable to hold back any longer. "Stop it. Just stop," I shouted. "They're just children, you're tearing them apart." He turned on me then, his anger no longer contained. "And what about you?" he retorted. "You're so busy defending them. You don't see the stress I'm under. You don't see me at all." I realized then that this was more than just a rough patch. We were at a breaking point. His unwillingness to seek joy with us, his relentless negativity. It wasn't just pushing me away, it was affecting our children deeply. Each day left emotional scars, and I feared the long-term effects it would have on them. The home that once held laughter and love now felt oppressive, a place where joy was suffocated under the weight of constant criticism and discontent. Edit. I'm not here for advice despite the flair. 20 years is a long time to build a life with someone. It's enough time to knit together countless memories, shared dreams, and intertwined lives. When I met him, I was in my early 20s, and he was everything I thought I wanted: charismatic, confident, with a smile that could light up a room. We fell into love as easily as one might fall into a dream, swept away by the promise of a future together. But dreams, I've learned, don't always hold up in the harsh light of day. As the years passed, the man I married seemed to retreat behind a facade I no longer recognized, replaced by someone whose warmth had cooled, whose kindness had soured into criticism. What had once been a partnership began to feel more like a prolonged battle, with each of us in our respective trenches, no longer fighting together but against one another. In an effort to bridge the gap, I suggested marriage counseling. It was a desperate grasp at what remained of us, a lifeline thrown into the turbulent waters of our failing relationship. Initially, he agreed, albeit reluctantly. But it was short-lived. After only a few sessions, he dismissed the entire endeavor. "There's no point paying someone to tell us what I already know," he said, his voice edged with the kind of defeat that suggested he saw no future in trying. He believed the counselor was just echoing sentiments that were already palpable between us. Undeterred, I scheduled another session. This time, I knew I would likely be going alone. It felt symbolic, this solitary act, a representation of the loneliness that had crept into my marriage, filling up the spaces where laughter and love used to live. Attending the on-demand marriage counseling session alone was a poignant experience. The decision to go by myself was not easy, but necessary. The office was the same, the couch familiar, yet everything felt different. Without him there, the space seemed larger, almost echoing the emptiness I felt. The counselor, a kind and perceptive woman, greeted me with a gentle nod, her eyes reflecting understanding that today was going to be a different kind of session. As I sat down, I felt an odd mix of relief and apprehension. Relief because I could speak freely without worrying about his reactions or the immediate tension his presence often brought. Apprehension, because going alone underscored the seriousness of our disconnection. It was as if his absence in the session mirrored the growing void in our relationship. The session started with the counselor asking simple questions about how I had been feeling. Speaking without him there, I found my words flowed more easily. There was no need to look over, to gauge his reaction or to temper my words to keep the peace. I talked about the loneliness, the sadness of feeling unpartnered in what was supposed to be a lifelong partnership. I shared the yearning for kindness, the need for a space where I wasn't constantly critiqued but understood and accepted. The counselor listened intently, occasionally guiding the conversation deeper into my feelings of disillusionment and loss. She asked about what happiness looked like for me now, in the current context of my life. This question stumped me. I had been so focused on trying to salvage whatever was left of our marriage that I hadn't stopped to consider what my own happiness might look like independently of him. We explored the dynamics that had led to our current state. Discussing these without him there allowed me to be more honest, more forthright about my grievances without fear of escalation. The counselor helped me see how my people-pleasing tendencies might have enabled some of the dynamics that were so painful now. We talked about setting boundaries, about the importance of self-care and self-respect in any relationship. The session came to an end and I felt lighter. It wasn't as though my problems vanished magically, but more like I started to see things clearly. By sharing my fears and worries openly, I felt stronger. Yes, the feeling of being alone was still present, but with it came a newfound courage, realization of my own needs, and the understanding that it's okay to pursue a life that meets those needs. Leaving the counselor's office, I felt a stark contrast to the times I had left it with him by my side. Previously, each session was followed by a silence, sometimes resentful, sometimes exhausted. We would leave together but more divided, each of us retreating into our own corners of pain and misunderstanding. This time, I left feeling a sense of individual purpose. The path forward was not yet clear, but the journey felt like my own. Reflecting on our 2 decades together, I've come to realize that the foundation of our relationship was flawed in ways I hadn't seen, or perhaps hadn't wanted to see. I have always been a people pleaser, a trait that made it easy for me to overlook slights, to forgive without amends, to absorb the brunt of his frustrations without complaint. I thought this was resilience, perhaps even a form of love. But there is only so much one can bear before realizing that what is being carried is not shared weight but a unilateral burden. Now, as I contemplate attending counseling alone, it feels like both an end and a beginning. It's an admission that while I can work on myself, I can't force him to engage with me in this process. The love I have for him persists, a stubborn flame not easily extinguished even by years of hardship. Yet, loving him no longer means sacrificing my own well-being. I've fallen out of love with the man he has become, even as I cling to the memory of the man he once was. The mutual respect, compassion, and kindness I yearn for are fundamental, yet they seem like foreign concepts to him now. My hope for a free space, where mistakes are met with understanding rather than contempt, feels like a modest ask in the grand scheme of a shared life. Yet, it's become a cornerstone of what I need to thrive, not just survive. As I face the possibility of attending counseling alone, it's not just the unraveling of our relationship that occupies my thoughts, but the reconstruction of my own sense of self. It's about reclaiming my right to a life where respect and kindness are not just occasional graces but consistent presences. Whether this path leads to reconciliation or separation remains unclear, but what is certain is my commitment to seeking a better, healthier way forward, for myself, and hopefully, for our children too. I used to be a people pleaser, but then I've realized life is short and I deserve a free space to make mistakes and do my own thing.
Husband cheated on me with my sister, but toxic family sided with her. Years passed, they contacted me, begging for a kidney to save my sister. You think family will always have your back? After my sister ruined my marriage, I faced the impossible choice of saving her, or letting her suffer. All was fine until about 8 months ago, when my sister, Emily, 28, a female, returned to our hometown after residing in Florida since she was 18. Her long-term lover dumped her and relocated to another city, leaving her impoverished. The circumstances surrounding their breakup remain mainly unknown. When my sister returned, she revealed that he had been cheating with men. I didn't know him very well, but that seemed far-fetched. I only met the guy 3 times because my sister would only come home for Christmas, and normally stayed for 3 to 4 days. He accompanied her twice during their 5-year relationship. I met him again 3 years ago, when my husband and I paid them a visit for a day, while on vacation. He didn't strike me as the type of guy who would have a double life and leave Emily with nothing. I tried to contact him once but was blocked, so I let it go. Emily went back in with my parents, Kelly, 55, a female, and Jimmy, 56, a man. For the first month she was here, she struggled to find a job, so I suggested that Ethan assist her. He is a higher up in his firm and assumed he would have some clout. He did, and she was able to secure a post in his department. This is a job within her field.
My sister and I have never been particularly close. She is the golden child, at least according to our mother, and our father has no spine when it comes to her. It's not overtly clear, it's just a million subtle details. For example, when we turned 16, we both acquired automobiles, but mine was an 8-year-old Dodge Neon, and hers was a 2-year-old Mitsubishi Eclipse. Her dance rehearsals, costumes and contests have cost thousands of dollars over the years. Some of the competitions were 6 or 7 hours away, and they didn't blink an eye. Meanwhile, when I asked for $50 for a volleyball or basketball camp at our local college, they gave it to me, but you'd think I was asking them to build me my own arena. What annoyed me the most was when I was 17. I went out with my partner, lost track of time, and arrived 15 minutes after curfew. They stole my automobile for a month just for that. The following year, when my sister arrived home 2 hours late and smelling like pot, she received a nasty talking to. I wasn't really sad when she left for college and chose to stay in Florida. Despite this, she began spending more and more time at our place, which I felt was wonderful at first, because it seemed like she was trying to be more connected to me. Then I noticed that she and Ethan were becoming increasingly familiar. They would discuss seemingly anything at length. They developed their own inside jokes. If I tried to include myself, they would respond, "Just a work thing." When I asked my husband about it, he simply stated that they had a lot in common and were working on various projects together at work. The first major red flag was that, after approximately a month, she would be at our house when I returned home from work. Ethan and I have distinct work schedules. While he works 8 to 4:30, I work 10 to 7. This happened rather often. When I inquired about it, I was usually told, "We had some work stuff to do." 2 months ago, I discovered something that made me question my own sanity. Every day before I leave for work, I make the bed. I always position the open side of the pillowcase toward the edge of the bed. When I arrived home that day, Emily had passed. She ate with us and then returned to my parents' place. As we climbed into bed, I noticed that 2 of the pillows had their cases turned towards the middle. I asked my hubby if he'd been in bed today. He looked surprised but responded, "No." "Why do you ask?" I responded, "The bed's not the same as I made it this morning." He said I must have been mistaken because no one was in the bed. I searched through his phone and laptop without his knowledge and discovered nothing. However, they worked together for 8 hours every day, 5 days a week, and then hung out after work. Why do they need to text? I felt as though I was losing my mind. 2 weeks ago, my folks invited us to dinner. Everything was going good until I noticed something. Ethan was only going by when Emily casually grabbed his arm. He looked at her, and she mumbled something. They pressed their foreheads together for only a second. Ethan jolted up and continued walking. Emily then simply looked at me, smiled, and returned to her task. I am not an idiot. I understand that this is a mountain of red flags. I really don't want to believe this. I've been in love with my hubby since I was 21. I planned a weekend trip to the city. I was going to ask him about things there. I hope this wasn't what I was thinking. Update 1. You survived, but my world has been decimated. We went on a weekend adventure. It was a lovely Friday night. We drank, danced, and were personal. We had further plans the next day, and I nearly said nothing. I thought he couldn't be doing both with her and with me. I was so incorrect. We were almost ready to start our Saturday, and I questioned him directly if he was having an affair with my sister. He teared up and answered, "Yes, he was." My heart sank. I asked him why. He apologized, saying he didn't want this to happen. They simply clicked, and before he knew it, they were kissing. Then more. I inquired whether he had been sleeping with her in our bed before I returned home from work. He simply turned his head in shame. I left. At that moment, all I had with me was my handbag, and I drove home alone. He took an Uber and arrived many hours later with my other belongings. He attempted to apologize, but I did not acknowledge him. Through my tears, he packed a bag and went to a motel. The following day, I informed my folks. They already knew. They apologized for what happened and informed me that Emily had departed last night and might not be back for a few days. I'm certain she went to stay with Ethan. That all occurred 3 months ago. Our divorce is almost finalized. Ethan found an apartment to rent right away, and Emily joined him. I am solely contacting him for our divorce. He originally told me I could only get the house and the savings. I believe this was guilt talking. Then, after a few days, he announced that we would have to split the house. I knew it was Emily in his ear. I had previously transferred everything from the savings account to a new one, so there was no fight. Just like that, 9 years of my existence had vanished. He has no idea what he's getting into. She is a narcissist, and will eventually discard him. Emily has been quite harsh throughout this. A few days after I found out, she mentioned me in a Facebook post. It was a selfie of her and him, with him kissing her cheek from behind. The caption said, "Feeling loved." It was terrible. I logged out of my account and deleted the app from my phone. She texted me about an hour later saying, "Sorry sis, I didn't mean to tag you. No hard feelings. I hope we can still be close. You'll meet your soulmate someday too." I blocked her. I blocked her on everything I could think of. My parents have not been much better. When I told them I was no longer going to contact Emily and Ethan, they tried to be sympathetic at first. My mother looked at me and said, "I'm sorry this happened. It shouldn't have happened this way, but your sister deserves to be happy too. You'll meet someone, and then we can put this all behind us." I became enraged and informed them about what Emily had tagged me in, and the text she sent me. My mother replied, "Well, you shouldn't be on that stuff anyway." My father hasn't said anything this entire time. He just sits there. I once asked him what he thought, and he simply answered, "I agree with your mother," before walking out of the room. I'm also cutting off any communication with them. The house will be sold soon, and I'll be moving to a different state. I'm not informing my family where or when. I haven't told them this is my plan. I just finished all of them. I wish them the worst. Update 2. Hello everybody. I realize it's been 4 years since I last updated everyone, but we had a huge event occur. I'll start by providing an update on myself. I am recently engaged. It took a lot of treatment to get me back out there. I began dating right soon after settling in Minnesota. I went on a decent first date, and then discovered what an annoying ass he was. I swore off guys forever after that. That's when I went to therapy to go with the trauma of my husband and sister's betrayal, as well as my parents' desertion. After a difficult year, I met Austin, a 37-year-old man. Yes, he shares the same first name as my father. LOL. But Austin is beautiful. He is a chef. He and his fraternal twin brother Jack own and operate a successful restaurant and bar. I'm incredibly excited to start my future with Austin. Enough about me. Now I'd like to tell you about my family's audacity. I had no contact for almost 9 months after I left. I didn't tell them where I moved. I only told a few of my closest friends and cousins. One day I returned home to find a wedding invitation in the mail. The occasion was Ethan and Emily's wedding. The invitation had a disgusting photo of them cuddling in a sunflower field. There was also a letter from my parents. It basically read like this: "You need to forgive and put all of this behind us. We know things didn't go the best, but we're a family, and families work through problems." They also stated Emily wanted me to be a bridesmaid, just like she was for them. What is the actual F? That letter revived all kinds of old wounds. My therapist saw a significant increase in business as a result. Today I find it amusing, but later not so much. I did not reply at all. The only thing I did was figure out which members of my extended family informed my ex-family about my address, and cut them off as well. This takes us to the most recent drama. Last week, Ethan, of all people, visited my apartment. Austin and I do not live together yet, but that will change soon. Ethan looked nice. Too good, as if he was attempting to present his best. I asked him when he arrived, "What do you want?" He responded, "I just want to talk. I'm so sorry for what I did. Emily and I are divorcing. I figured out she was unfaithful our whole marriage. Surprise, surprise. I don't expect you to take me back, but we should talk and get some closure for both of our sakes." I gave a double blink. He'd lost his mind. I gave him a straight face and replied, "No, I give you no closure. You made your own bed. Did you really think that golden hoe of hers, that has had more visitors than the Holiday Inn, was suddenly going to put up a no vacancy sign, just because you put a ring on it? You're even dumber than I thought. I forgive nothing. I want nothing from you. I don't care. I'm better off now, and that will always be the case. You can go to hell." Then I turned and returned to my apartment, locking the door behind me. I immediately contacted my landlord, the loveliest old lady in the world. I've grown close to her over the last 4 years, and she knows about my former marriage. Ethan was still lurking in the corridor. A few minutes later, her 2 nephews, who helped maintain the apartment grounds, arrived and informed Ethan that he was not welcome, and was on a forbidden list. If he returned, the police would be summoned for trespassing. I had hoped that was the last of it, but it wasn't. I now have a reasonably simple 9-to-5 work schedule, so I go to the restaurant practically every night Austin manages. I don't get in the way. I just hang there and take advantage of the few minutes he has available. I've made close friends with many of the staff, including many of Austin and Jack's family members, and it's truly the family setting I've always desired. I'm there the next night when Ethan walks in and sits down at my table. It was a slow Tuesday. Austin noticed and instantly walked over to check on me. He knew Ethan from the images I'd shown him. Ethan extended his hand to Austin. Austin just looked at it and asked, "Do you want me to kick him out?" I answered, "Not yet. I have a couple of questions." Ethan perked up as if he had won something. What a tool. I asked him to explain what happened between him and Emily. I'll admit it was just morbid curiosity. He informed us that she was having at least 2 affairs with married men. Old habits die hard, I suppose. It had been 2 years. It was a tough time for me, he replied, his eyes rolling. I interrupted. You are not that dumb though. Did you protect yourself, or did she get half of all your stuff? With a smile, Ethan said, I stuck it out almost another year with her so I could start stowing away savings and selling off some assets. In the end, she got a fraction of what she would have. And what happened to her then? I inquired. Ethan responded, she had to move back in with your parents. Again. I was satisfied. Yes, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. You can go now. Austin, you heard her. Out of my restaurant. Ethan attempted to object. No, I want to. I interrupted him. No forgiveness, no closure. I just wanted to know my loser sister was back living at home. Get out. Austin stood and pointed to the door. Ethan looked around and noticed that the bartender and 2 waitstaff members were glaring at him. He stood, tucked his tail and turned towards the door. Austin began. And if you ever come back? Ethan instantly said, Yeah, I know. Cops trespassing. After he left, practically everyone checked on me. It was both pleasant and embarrassing. My beloved future in-laws phoned me. They demanded that I stay with Austin for the next few days just to be safe. It was very sweet. I've never had a family that looked after me so well. I did not hear from Ethan again, and I pray I never will. Update 3. Hello everybody. I did not expect it to happen, but I have another update for you. First, let me introduce myself. I am a 41-year-old mother of 2 boys, ages 6 and 2. Austin and I are doing quite well. I now work as a part-time office manager for the restaurant, and Austin's cousin, Samaya, invested in the business, and we launched a second location 3 years ago. It's been a lot more work, but with the 3 of them remaining highly committed in both places, we're successful. Plus it allows each of them some personal time. It wasn't ideal, but I believe I became pregnant while living with Austin, after his parents demanded it following my previous posting. They now joke that they had always wanted to be grandparents, and it was all part of the plan. Now for an update. After the previous time Ethan found me, I figured it was only a matter of time before my parents or sister showed up. It didn't happen immediately. I relaxed a little since I felt I had a strong support structure in place, and I returned to social media. I maintained no touch with much of my family, including extended family, but I had no illusions that they would be unable to locate me if they tried. I did not receive my first message until after our first child was born. It was from my mother. She offered a half-hearted apology, mentioned forgiveness, and inquired about her grandchild. I was going to block her, but I felt the inference that my child was her grandchild offensive. My response was, You do not have any grandchildren. I am not your daughter, and thus my children have no relation to you. If you want grandchildren, then you should encourage Emily to get out there and do what she does best. At that moment, I had blocked her. She created fresh accounts and attempted to contact me for a time, but I always denied or erased any requests or communications. This takes me to the recent drama. I was getting swamped with requests, texts, and other attempts to contact them. I read part of it, and it was a sob story about missing out on their grandchildren's lives and wanting to make amends. I honestly didn't care. I had no intention of including them in my life again. Then the most startling thing happened. Emily began reaching out to me. She wasn't saying much except that she really wanted to talk to me. After about 3 weeks, I consented to a Zoom meeting with just me and no kids. When it first started, people kept wanting to see the children. I was determined that it would not happen. They have 3 grandparents: Austin's mother, father, and grandmother. I was getting the impression that this was about something different. Emily looked dreadful, and my parents appeared old and worn. As we started talking, they all began apologizing for everything that had happened, even Emily. She admitted she was wrong to do what she did, and wished she could have her sister back. That was a ludicrous idea. Mom immediately took over, spewing her usual nonsense about being a family and looking out for one another. When she was finished, I simply looked at them and said, "Is that all you have? I'm going to leave." Then they yelled at me to wait, and the facade crumbled. The actual cause was soon to emerge. Apparently, Emily has been dealing with health challenges for the past few years. For whatever reason, her kidneys are failing, and she requires a transplant. That is why they were so persistent in contacting me. A family member is the most likely suitable match. I put it to them. This is why you call me? You want me to save her after what she did? My husband wasn't enough. Now she needs a body part from me too? My mother snapped. Stop being like this. All of that was a long time ago. She began choking up and crying as she continued. I get it. You hate us. But she is going to die if she doesn't get a transplant soon. Is that what you want? I know you think she wronged you in the worst way, but please, just this once, can we set that aside? I became quiet. I wanted to see if they said anything else. At some point he began to speak. Look, we're sorry for all that happened, but we have some pretty big problems. Between her medical bills and not being able to work, your mom and I are getting older and have our own problems. We've got a lot of issues. We need you to come back to Missouri and see if you are a match, but we also could use some help. Or we might lose the house. So, you need my kidney and my money, I told you. Don't put it like that, he said. Emily spoke up. Please, just come home. I need my big sister. I don't want to die. Can you just come and see if you're a match? If you're not, we will never contact you again. I told them I'd think about it, do some research, and let them know tonight. Tomorrow I finished the call and proceeded to speak with my husband. He told me he supported me completely, no matter what I did, and then asked if we should all travel together, or if he should simply come. I said no to both. I was going on my own. Sure, here's the continuation, punctuated while leaving the original material intact. I informed my old family that I would receive lab results here in Minnesota, and if I was a match, I would come there and we could discuss everything else. Then, about a week later, I received the findings, and it appeared that Emily and I were an ideal fit. I agreed to return home to St. Charles. By the time I arrived, Emily had developed some problems and needed to be brought to the hospital. This got everyone off my back about meeting for dinner, because I had no intention of doing anything social with these people. Especially because whenever they appeared to have a free minute, my parents would ask whether I had considered assisting them with their financial difficulties. They were able to stabilize Emily. I went to meet with the doctors who would perform the transplant. They began going over everything with me, and I expressed my want to have this chat with everyone. We all went into Emily's room. My folks were already present. The doctor started outlining the scenario. Emily had about 6 more months without a transplant. They went over the procedure with us all, and emphasized how perfect a match I was, how unlikely it was to find a more viable donor, and how important it was that we schedule the surgery as soon as possible. I stepped over to Emily and grasped her hand. I looked at her with deep brown eyes and replied, "Did you hear that? I'm a perfect match. Essentially, I'm the only person who can save you, and I'm not going to. You are the most vile, narcissistic piece of gutter trash I have ever known. I only came here so you would know the one person who could keep you alive is the one person you have wronged the most, and now you're paying for that with your life. You're going to die. You should make peace with that." Emily burst into tears, and my parents turned to confront me. The doctor and nurse stood there in complete disbelief. I turned to my parents and warned them, "Don't even talk to me, and don't you dare ever ask me for anything ever again. The only money I would ever spend on you would be for your funeral, under the stipulation that you be cremated and the ashes released to me, at which point I will promptly deposit your remains in the dirtiest John I can find. I left the room without looking back. I am back home, surrounded by my true family, and I couldn't be happier. Thanks for watching and being part of the drama. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a wild news story.